in order to establish a different kind of framework for how to like think about aliens, you need a different kind of POV character. You can't have a gun as your protagonist. You need someone who's very different than that.
Changing effects so that we think they look like us?
Ooh, that is a really good question. I want them to look like me, I think.
Does it come from a selfish place or a safety place?
Probably a safety place.
Yeah.
Because if they look like me, that means maybe we have a common ancestor and maybe we just grew our family, you know?
That could be true. That could be true. Or maybe it's someone from the future. I mean, in the world of conspiracy, by the way, if anyone's listening to this and they're not into conspiracies, I thoroughly apologize and say, feel free to skip to our next episode. I think conspiracies are fun. They're just our version of tall tales and stories and myth.
You know, I want to believe.
That's why it brings me to our movies that we watched this week, because it makes you wonder why we trust the people we do and if these are the people that should be making decisions. Aliens. Because I think of all the three movies we go over, which is The X-Files, Contact, and Arrival, I think Jodie Foster in Contact is really the only one we should be sending on a space mission or to meet with extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
I don't think criminal investigators and paranormal investigators are the ones who should ever meet with these things face to face. There's just too many questions and too many that their brains would explode. Although I love the idea of the linguist and a mathematician going forward to meet them, I just don't know they're going to have the right skills. You know, I just can't think of a single professor I had who I'm like, they should be our emissary to the ETs. Don't know that I have.
Really? I've got like two or three in mind already that I'm just like, I think they'd be a good emissary of mankind.
I think they are calm, reserved, smart people, but I just don't know about if they could like suss out intentions. I don't know. Maybe it was my history, you know?
I gotcha.
They'd just be too nerdy. Of the three, what was your favorite? I mean, I guess we both love Arrival. What are we talking about? Did anything surprise you about the other two?
I love Contact.
So good.
Like, it is so well done. It's from Carl Sagan. Matthew McConaughey's in it. Like, we love Matthew McConaughey. The X-Files, it just felt like a really long episode of The X-Files to me.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really surprising. It didn't really push the ball. Didn't really push the narrative much at all for me.
Yeah, X-Files was interesting because it's one of the first and maybe only times that we had a popular show do a theatrical film in the middle of seasons that wasn't at the end. Because so many, whether you're talking about El Camino or otherwise for Breaking Bad, usually it's you wrap the show up, people are still kind of hyped, they're asking for more. Okay, 3 years later, you make a movie. This was between like seasons 4 and 5, and it connects things. So kind of crazy there. It was kind of like a big old TV movie, but for the record, X-Files came out in 1998, $66 million budget, and made $189 million at the box office. So adjusted for inflation, it made $364 million. This was not a small movie. I think that we were too young to understand. I know my parents loved it. We were too young to understand just how big of a show this was and how big the movie was. People love the X-Files.
I mean, I know my parents watched it. Like, I remember them recording it on VHS. I remember watching episodes with them. And so I have memories of watching the show, but I was too young to like stitch it together into a cohesive narrative at all. And certainly too young to have like known the scale of the movie. Not that my parents wouldn't have taken me to go see it, because they took me to see Jurassic Park in theaters when I was like 3.
Yeah.
2? I don't know. I was too young, but they took me to go see it. But yeah, in terms of like, you know, I wish that I'm not going to lie to you. I am not going to go back and watch all of the X-Files. I'm just not going to do it.
It's a lot.
But I wish that I had the entire series in my mind while I watched this so that I could, have it couched in more than just kind of this cultural osmosis that I've kind of absorbed over time.
Yeah, freshman year of college, I had a bunch of, let's just call it a bunch of hipster ass friends, and they were all just loving rewatching shows from the early 90s and mid 90s. So I watched a ton of it, yeah, 2010, freshman year of college. It's good, it's great. You can also see how so many other shows or characters are based on, Scully and Mulder. I thought the movie was fun. I thought it was like a long TV episode for sure. The opening scene with the cavemen was kind of scary. If you put it in like the context of the 90s, it was fun
Yeah.
and scary. The idea of like being in
It
Antarctica
was during the Ice Age, Texas.
during the Ice Age in Texas. You're right. Sorry. Antarctica comes later. Getting attacked by this alien, stabbing, and then getting overtaken by its like blood virus thing. Anyway, fantastic. That was a scary way to start the movie. And then, of course, all the conspiracy tie ins of Oklahoma City bombing and how that relates to what happens to them in Dallas. And there's the crazy author, Kurtzwell, who's the crank, who's actually correct about a bunch of stuff. They have, this was the part that killed me. I didn't realize how many conspiracies that I heard propagated from adults around me in the 2000s came from this. FEMA and all of their death camps and faking things and martial law, they specifically talk about here, cover ups, timetables being set for all these different things to come into play for FEMA to take over and make sure people are kept quiet. All the ideas of all these like and discrediting people with kiddie porn, which we have seen time and time again, which has happened, but also like it being the modus operandi of the FBI, kind of fun. But all these things I was watching and I was like, oh, a secret syndicate working with underground aliens who are here to help them build up. This is stuff that like my dad and his friends talked about around barbecues, and I was like, what the hell's going on right now? What are they talking about? Like, this is still propagated of like, this is what's happening. There's a secret. Whether people talk about reptilian cabals like Marjorie Taylor Greene, or,
Yeah.
the Jews are actually aliens, whatever the crazy shit, it was all in this movie. And I was like, oh, it's kind of fun. Also sad.
Yeah. In terms of like I don't know, maybe what I'm seeing, especially considering we 10 minutes ago just had our finished up our conversation with the boys, is that like society doesn't grow. We just like cycle continually.
Yeah.
And the stuff that we're on right now, our parents were on 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And that we just haven't we don't advance as a society. We just like spin our wheels continually.
It is a little sad, to say the
It is a
least.
little sad. I do love, I love the ancient alien kind of theory
Yeah.
that like aliens have been here for a long time and that our ancestors interacted with them.
Yeah.
We kind of got that played with in Prometheus, and we're having it played with here. Although I gotta say, I'm a little tired of the alien narrative where they infect our bodies and use our bodies as eggs to
I
grow
know.
their next form. I'm just like, can we imagine something different, please?
Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It just, I understand where it comes from in a storytelling perspective. The idea of like a virus could travel far and it's very strong. Okay, virus, but it is really sad. The idea that these things would be so advanced they could travel light years and across all the galaxies of the universe, and yet they're like, we kind of need a host that looks like us in order to pilot our ships. We hope we find a mammal or something similar of this size. Is crazy. And it's kind of sad because I'll say for this being an alien movie, we didn't get a ton of alien time.
No, we didn't.
Couple of attacks to some scientists, the beginning with the cavemen, the last scene in the giant UFO mothership in Antarctica. That's really all we get. And even then, it's just some hand grabbing. I'm like, show up, do some fighting. Let's have some face
Yeah.
to face time,
Yeah.
A little frustrating.
It makes me wonder like what archetypally is happening in our mind where we're continually like it is invasion of the body snatchers. Like what is it in our imaginations that we keep needing to return to where the aliens come from us? The aliens come to us, take us over, use us, exploit us, and then become monsters from us. Like what's happening there?
It makes me wonder, yeah, that's a good point. It makes me wonder, do we all have this feeling that we are the monster on the inside and all it would take is one little thing to bring it out? Do we think that we can't trust ourselves or each other? It's almost like this paranoia of if the person next to you on the train could actually be an alien, can you trust anybody? And it just feels kind of dark and scary. I don't know.
It is kind of dark and scary.
X-Files, a fun one if you watch the show, and if you don't, still fine, but maybe don't rent it outright and expect to get the whole story. Some good aliens. But I will say Contact a year earlier blows X-Files out of the water.
Oh my gosh, just like it's so good.
And why is it still completely relevant today?
And why is it so not known today? Like, I don't know how many people have actually seen this movie, let alone heard of it.
Yeah, this was an interesting one. It made 171 million in 1997, so 330 million. Again, we're talking about the 90s making 330 million. That's a lot for a movie that's based on Carl Sagan's hit book, but it is a book. And for a movie with no, okay, I can't say no explosions, with few explosions, few, if any battle sequences. I think this movie is honestly too soft and nice for certain people these days.
Too cerebral.
Too cerebral. I tried watching with someone and they were not interested. They were just kind of bored because there is a lot of time
Really?
at the beginning with the sound that we hear over the radar dish and just kind of
Yeah.
waiting and building. And there's like a lot of let's discuss who's going to actually go in the pod. Oh my gosh, it's going to be you. No, it's not. There is a lot of like discussion. I think, have you ever seen The Right Stuff?
Yes.
Okay. Comparing this to The Right Stuff is fun because this feels a little more realistic, even though that's based on a
Yeah.
true story of like a woman who's been working on this her whole life, scientist, very educated, gets put last in line. Of course, she has to be the one that actually does it, but she gets put last in line. Nobody trusts her. Defunding, disinformation. It's just the minutia of bureaucracy surrounding this beautiful thing of we can connect with another life force. And yet everybody else is like, but can we monetize it? Can we kill it? Ugh.
Or does it trying to kill us?
Or does it try and kill us?
Yeah. I mean, I think what I love so much about both Contact and Arrival is that they take the alien invasion thing and they're just like turning it on its head and being kind of optimistic about it and being
Yeah.
like, actually, maybe humans are the problem here and that anything that's out there is more morally advanced than we are. Like, so I know, so I'm a big fan of Carl Sagan, right?
Yeah.
And so this is me. I'm just putting a quarter in myself and I'm going to play the song really quick.
Let's do it.
Uh, so there's this thing called the Fermi paradox, right? Do you know what the
Yeah.
Fermi paradox is?
Yeah.
So the Fermi paradox is where, we should theoretically have, if you use the Drake equation, somewhere around 100,000 advanced civilizations in our own galaxy alone, which is a huge number. And
Yeah.
then the paradox is, where are they? How come we can't hear them? And so that's the birth of this question of like, what is SETI, which is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence that NASA is doing, where we're pointing these giant satellite dishes into space, trying to listen to the radio of space, basically just trying to like hear the signals that were leaking out into space. Cause like Earth is leaking signals out into space all the time. Then they even reference that in this movie where the first signal broadcasted out into space was Hitler at the Olympics,
Yeah.
which is just such a colossal bummer. That's the first thing that got out into space. But so the question remains, if there theoretically are so many advanced civilizations in the galaxy, where are they? And how come we haven't made contact with them? And Carl Sagan, I mean, there's a lot of, if you've read or watched The Three Body Problem or read those books, there's kind of this idea of the dark forest, which is, oh, maybe space is like this dark forest. And you're playing this game theory where the other civilization likely has been alive longer than us, is more advanced technologically than us. And so if we make any noise, they're going to hear us and then they're going to just kill us. And they're going to
Yeah.
come for our resources, which is a pretty cynical and dark, nihilistic take, very scarcity based take on kind of aliens and contact scenarios where it's like, this galaxy ain't big enough for the two of us. And so someone's got to go. And a lot of kind of alien narratives over the last, I don't know, 30 years, 3 decades are kind of based around this paradigm because it's a very human paradigm because it's based on like, what did we do when we came to a new place? We brought our weapons. We we accidentally brought our germs and we killed people. We, the indigenous peoples of every continent suffer at the hands of the British and the Americans.
Yeah.
That's just what happens when a lower technical civilization encounters a higher technical civilization. But Carl Sagan posited a technologically advanced civilization made it to the point of interstellar expansion. They would have had to advance beyond lower a lower moral level and would have had to jump to a higher morality as a species to even make it there. Because in order to become interstellar, you need to have the technologies that, if you used improperly, would kill you as a civilization. And you need to advance beyond killing yourself as a civilization in order to use these technologies to get you out into space. And so we can see that with the Cold War, the invention of nuclear weapons. We have enough nuclear weapons on the earth to destroy our entire species how many times over, and yet we still have them. It's ridiculous. Or
Yeah.
climate change. We've invented these energy technologies that are so substantially altering our capacity to live on the earth that in time we might lead to our own extinction. And that the only way to advance as a species to where we can actually propagate ourselves out into the stars is to solve these problems, to think for peace and think for cooperation. And that Carl Sagan's idea was that in order to be an interstellar civilization, you have to pass through an evolutionary bottleneck that selects for pro-social, beneficial, benign cultural tendencies. And so
Yeah.
the very fact that this movie Contact is based on an alien civilization that alerts us to their presence and then sends us freely the gift of technology is revolutionary in the terms of just how we tell stories about aliens, because it is so counter to how we ourselves as humans interact with other people. We're very exploitative in our relationships and our power relationships. But to think that a higher and more advanced technological species would just give us a freebie is
Yeah.
is so crazy to the human brain that I think we need more stories like this.
We're too Darwinian
End
still.
song. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you already mentioned it, but that bottleneck, that great filter, the idea that you have to have self-selecting for, benevolent societies, but also just like something that could create a tool and a ship and interstellar travel. That's a lot to deal with for any planet that could possibly have life. Is it just hardwired that we just want to kill everything we don't understand?
I think it is. Yeah.
It is. And the question of the uncanny valley always comes up as to why we have in our DNA this really sharp observation skill that lets us tell if something is actually human or just trying to look like a human. And it makes you wonder, why did we develop this? What looked like us but wasn't us that we had to keep out of our groups and tribes and kill? Some say it's just like Neanderthals or other Homo sapien or habilis or whatever else. Or maybe it was something from another planet. Who knows? Or another dimension. I have no clue. But I think it is sad, like you're talking about. It's sad that we don't have more stories that say, if something is this technologically advanced, perhaps they are benevolent and we should be open to trusting them. Because whether or not anything actually happens on Earth in the next 20, 40, 50, 500 years with another space society, it is really a story of how we should be treating other groups of people right now, right?
Yeah.
That let's just go there. If the Scandinavians suddenly came up with water powered cars and they tried to bring them to America and we're like, oh, they all suck, they break down, people died from them, we just got to go bomb Norway. It would be insane, right? Like, why would we do that? So then we have technology coming from a different planet and we're treating it the same way of like, can't be good. Bomb it. Shoot them. Let's go. And honestly, watching Contact made me really depressed at some moments, thinking that if we somehow already have or create interstellar travel in the next couple hundred years or thousand years, I really don't want a crusade in space.
Yeah, because I know who Carl Sagan is, and I've read some of his books and stuff. I'm not surprised that religion factored so heavily into this movie.
Yeah.
He's not a fan of religion, but I'm actually surprised at how respectfully it was treated.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like a two-dimensional pastiche caricature. It was like, no, they actually made some really good points of 90 something percent of the people on this planet believe in God. And if you're going to be a representative of the people of this planet, maybe you should too. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that's actually a really good point. Like, maybe we can leave the dogmas behind this kind of central core of like just believing in something. I think it's really crucial to who we are as humans. And even the main character, I don't forgot what her name is. If we've learned anything, it's that I don't remember characters' names in movies. They're just faces to me.
The story is more important than the name.
The story is more important than the name. But our main character, she kind of plays it coy the entire time.
Jodie Foster's Ellie Arroway, a great character.
She's just like, she doesn't really come down in one way or the other. She's more just like, look, I'm a realist. I live into reality as it is, and I don't do this dogma stuff. And I'm like, I get that. I dig that. Yes, you are the person that I want to send to the aliens because you don't have the baggage that these other people do. Because I think Matthew McConaughey's character, Matthew McConaughey's character is a really good foil to Jodie Foster's character where, he is a man of faith, but he's like really grounded and he's really spiritual and he's a good advisor and he's not full of this crazy dogma. The guy who suicide bombs the the spaceship that they're building is like, he's the dark side, he's the shadow, and Matthew McConaughey is kind of the light of like, no, this is kind of the grounding experience of mankind. But you're right. I think that if something like this happened right now, it would be so mired in so much bullshit that we would squander an opportunity to make contact with an interstellar species just because we couldn't get out of our own fucking way.
Which is so
Let
depressing.
it happen.
I think what makes this movie, first off, lovable, like you're talking about, is this belief or this blending of faith and science in such a way that, in all honesty, in order to practice and push forward and everything else with science, you have to believe, right? There are things that we still cannot explain. We have theorems for theories or hypotheses, but it's not like it's complete fact and it's so absolute that we have no room here. I mean, I just absolutely love the double slit experiment. And I love light acting as a particle and as a wave because it just fucks with us in the best way to say, you're close, but you still don't got it. There's still some stuff you just can't explain. And I remember as a kid, everyone saying, like, we don't know how bumblebees fly. I think that's been well disproved if we do know how bumblebees fly. But as a kid, it was magical to think, like, oh, it's a really fat bee with little tiny wings. We don't know how it works. And now as an adult, and we have science moving forward and religion staying the same, but being more militant again, I think it's interesting to say it doesn't have to be that way. And especially right now with the current political climate, it's funny to watch 1997 and be like, oh, it was the same then. We are, in, like you said, in these human cycles. I think that watching this movie and at the end, having Jodie Foster be at that trial and say, it's a belief. I believe I was there. At the end of the day, it's faith. You have to take my story and what I'm saying on faith. It's just the perfect payoff. I just love it so
good.
much.
Yeah.
Because you could boil it down to like, ooh, scientist feminist finally gets faith and, super religious white male gets a little bit of science. No, I don't think it's that simplistic. I think what it is just more human of rationalizing and coming to terms with there are things that are inexplicable that we feel, like love, which is, Palmer's big thing at the beginning. Explain love for your father. Where's your fact proof? And there's no way to factually prove it. There's actions and there's things, but there's no way to prove it.
Yeah.
I think this movie does such a good job of, again, making love the center of it, which, if you are religious, is the point. Like that's always been the point. So, just so good.
Yeah. I really respect movies that don't make caricatures of science or religion, and they allow them to be more nuanced and grown up and mature than we're typically used to seeing them. Because I think, especially, you and I have a religious background, and I think that, religious, especially Christianity, is kind of used as a punching bag a lot in terms of like liberal storytelling. Because it's really easy to make fun of. Like, watch The Boys. Like, it's so easy to make fun of these people and their dogmatic beliefs simply because it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
there's something so fundamentally human about belief and about faith and about love and about like believing in something larger than yourself. And I think that's what Carl Sagan really connected with in Contact, was that he allowed kind of religion and faith to be a more mature thing. And he didn't pull a Richard Dawkins, and he didn't like punch down at it. He
Yeah.
didn't make it a caricature. He allowed it to be what it was, and he allowed science to be what it was. And he created a phenomenal story of like humans need, I guess the story was that the presence of the aliens required humanity to work together in such a way that we could actually make contact with them, which is probably, a great way to kind of start talking about Arrival. But I love the radical optimism in the story of, because I think, we've touched on it a lot. The way the archetypal storytelling of aliens is really a way of talking about the other humans, other species, other countries, other nations, just someone who isn't us. And so many of our stories about aliens are very cynical. They're very dark. They're very violent. They're very nihilistic. And to be presented with a story that's like, no, the other has a gift for us and that we can trust it turns it on its head. And it's so optimistic that I'm like, damn it, we need more stories like this to like infect our imagination so that we can imagine a better future.
Yeah, we don't have a ton of movies that are just like, hey, by the way, ETs can be great and we can accept it and we can be more loving and it could be a harmonious thing. There's just too many that are based in fear. And I think that's partially why I'm a little worried that if something was to happen or if we were to have more understanding or things brought to the public, this is why, if the conspiracies are true, if the government or anybody else really does know about ETs, why they're struggling to share any information. Because there was a religious group of, I think it was like 20 to 40 religious leaders worldwide pulled together a few years ago, in which they were briefed and said if there was a press release and conference that said there is life on other planets, what would it do to your congregations? And a lot of these religious leaders were like, oh, it would cripple them. It would absolutely cripple everything that's going on, pandemonium, rioting, whatever, which is sad that we believe that of ourselves and sad that it probably is true. And I think watching this movie, it makes it clear there is a way forward, but it takes some time and prep. There has to be some
Yeah.
things discussed of like, we have to be more benevolent. If we're already killing each other over silly things like land, it's not going to go well when somebody else shows up. I will
Yeah.
say one thing though, on your note of a gift and receiving a gift. How much do you know about the Voyager golden record?
I know that on the Voyager, one of the Voyager spacecrafts, we included a record on it that when played, like that if the aliens could figure out how to play it, it would be all the various languages of Earth, like they included messages saying hello and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And then on it, they also had like inscribed directions back to Earth with
Hmm.
diagrams of humans and stuff. And it's like, oh, that's kind of hopeful,
Yeah.
also kind of scary, but kind of hopeful.
Because there's another theory called the gravity theory, which is if a society or a planet, whatever else, was so good to be able to colonize the solar system, they say it's not that much further for them to colonize galaxies afterwards. They're like it's a similar level of struggle and strife. It just takes millions of light years and millions of years. So they're like, if there are societies that have actually moved on and colonized, they're getting closer. They've already been doing it, right? So there is some of that in there. But yeah, on this golden record, we have like a little inscribed gold plate that shows them how to do it. You put this here to play the sound and you hear the music. On it, there's like 21 or 22 tracks, I want to say, including greetings in 55 different languages from all around the world. Bach, Mozart, Stravinsky, Beethoven, and then two of my favorite things, and I only learned about this because I wrote a paper on Chuck Berry. We included Johnny Be Good from Chuck Berry. Like the song from Back to the Future, like the
Oh my
classic
gosh.
Johnny
You
Be
guys aren't ready
Good.
for this yet.
Your kids will love it. Your little alien kids will love it. The fact that we were like, what is the sound of Earth? And they were like, Johnny Be Good. If we sent out a gold record today, I honestly think we would have to put I'm a Believer or All Star by Smash Mouth, or maybe like Can You Take Me Higher by Creed? Something that's
Or
just like
WAP
so.
by
Yeah, obviously it was nostalgic by that point for the people putting this record together for the Voyager. So what would be that nostalgic for us? Nickelback? Look at this photograph. Could you just imagine?
Look at this photograph.
They're like, what the hell's a photograph? So I kind of love that we've sent out our own little gift basket of goodwill. And I hope whoever comes across it before its mission is concluded in 2036, I hope we get something back. You know, I hope someone gets it and enjoys it.
That'd be so cool. Just get it like an interstellar artifact.
I think it's fun. If we have a galactic museum, it needs to go in there. They're like, remember when the little
Yes.
Earthlings sent us their old vinyl record? Okay.
Their old iPod full of
It only makes Star Lord and Guardians of the Galaxy all that
yeah,
much better to be like, it's
it does,
practically
yeah.
the same thing. We send
Yeah.
someone off with some of our music.
We sent a Zune out into space.
Let's talk about the Zune that space sent to us, or rather, they call it Abbott and Costello. I really think it's more like Hall and Oates or like Bob Ross. They're doing a lot of
Yeah.
painting. There's a lot of like musical
They
or
are, yeah.
sonic qualities.
Yeah.
Arrival 2016 made 203 million, which by the way, this is the most depressing money adjusted for our time stat. All right, 203 million in 2016 is 263 million today.
Holy shit, dude.
And
Oh
that's the
my
magic of
gosh.
inflation, baby.
Oh, my heart.
Ugh. Her intro, which I know I'm not going to do justice. I hope I can put it at the beginning of this podcast, but where she says, I used to think this was the beginning of your story. The memory's a strange thing. It doesn't work like I thought it did. We're so bound by time and its order. She says she remembers moments in the middle, but then her final line is just so impactful to me. Now I'm not so sure I believe in beginnings and endings anymore. And I will
Ugh.
say, this movie messed me up this time because I've never
Really?
watched it with this thought in mind. Arrival does to us what Abbott and Costello did to Amy Adams because we know the end from the beginning and we choose to sit there and watch it, knowing exactly how it plays out. And it made me so sad, mad at the same time. I was like, we're committing the same life choice that she did. We know what happens. We know that daughter is going to die, and we're watching it still.
And yet we stream it anyways.
And I mean, I have the DVD, so I pop that in for old time's sake. Yeah, we just take ourselves down the same journey that Louise Banks, Amy Adams' character, takes.
That's
And
pretty
we do it
existential. That's
willingly.
pretty meta.
We do it willingly. We love this movie. What else are we going to talk about? It's just the best.
So this is Denis Villeneuve, right?
Yep.
So he did he come off as Sicario and do this?
He
Was
did.
Sicario the one before this?
Yep.
He's just such a good filmmaker. He just he understands, I don't know, scale, tone, cinematography with music. Like this movie didn't even have a lot of music to it. But when it did have music, really well placed, really greatly edited. Like this had to have been edited so well, considering the fact that it was playing future bits as if they were flashbacks.
Yeah.
And I remember you and I saw this at the same time in the theaters. And at what point in the movie did you realize that he was playing with time?
I'm gonna be the loser and just say it. The first time I saw it, it wasn't until like very close to the end where I was like, wait a second. I had noticed she didn't have a ring on, and I figured she'd been divorced, and which she kind of goes through in the flashbacks. But does she mention what daughter or I saw a daughter, I don't have a daughter? It honestly wasn't long before the actual reveal
Yeah,
for
no, I
me.
think for me, it was the reveal. I was just so bought in on it. Of just like, oh, this I mean, they do such a good job of selling it too. Of like, oh, at the beginning, you can kind of tell that she's oh, she has a daughter that died, and
Yeah.
then once they join the story in the present moment, she's kind of this sad, depressive figure. And you're just like, oh, well, that makes sense. If she had a
Yeah.
daughter die, of course she's going to be sad and depressive. It's not just because she's a single lady living on her own, teaching in a college and having her life go nowhere. That's not the reason that she's depressed. It's depressed because her daughter died. No, they sold it so well for me that I don't think I didn't put it together until the end, like until they revealed it. Right
Yeah.
now that I watch it through again, knowing that ahead of time, it's so well done and so well seated and edited, especially, in terms of Jeremy Renner's character and like the the plot points becoming relevant to the plot in the middle. Like the flashbacks or flash forwards, you're not sure when you're watching it what they are, but they become relevant to the plot, especially in regards to like the non-zero sum game line. Like that was a moment where I was like, I remember watching and being like, wait, what? Where is this taking place? Like when is this taking place? And so it was really well done. Denis Villeneuve, he knows how to make a movie. That's like a foregone conclusion at this point. Like that's just, we're preaching to the choir.
I mean, let's just talk about his run for 2 seconds before we go back to Aliens.
Yeah.
2013 Prisoners. Oh my gosh, amazing. 2013 Enemy. I'll be honest, I have not fully watched. My arachnophobia is a little bit much. I've seen the clips, and that's pretty scary. 2015 Sicario. 16 Arrival. 17 Blade Runner 2049. 21 Dune 1. 22, 24 Dune Part 2. I mean, we're just talking about a guy who has just got it.
This guy just makes hits.
He just makes hits. And even with Blade Runner being a box office meanderer, if you will, and some critics didn't like it, most people did. But that is one of the most beloved movies of the last 10 years where people are like, how did I not watch this? This is amazing.
I mean, it's like it's better than the source material.
It is.
It's so good. Ryan Gosling does so good. Like that movie is amazing.
That movie opened my eyes to Dave Bautista being a fantastic actor. I was like, oh my gosh.
A real live actor.
Which I will say, Arrival for me did it for Jeremy Renner. He's good in Avengers, but he's just not like core. He's a core character, but not like one of the top three. And so he's good, but he kind of fits into the ensemble. This definitely brought him back to the power that we saw in The Hurt Locker of being so poised and poignant and emotional and just having impeccable timing. I think this movie does such a good job because it really takes us in media res, which is a shock for some people, but we just get right into the action. Boom, they're here. Holy shit. Okay, helicopter, pick you up at nighttime. We're here. Let's figure this out. We're going inside the ship right now. I think it's great because it doesn't waste too much time with the myth and mystery of like, ooh, but what's it going to be like inside? It does the opposite of the Jaws effect in my mind. We're not like waiting for the shark for 50 minutes. We're like inside, we see the aliens, Abbott and Costello, and we get down to business. And that to me makes this a better alien movie than most ones we see. Not only because they're benevolent, but we're not waiting the whole flick to see them. That's not the big reveal. The big reveal is why are they here and what does it mean for us? Which I think is just the best part of this one. This is like the most human in my mind, other than Contact, is the most human of all the alien movies we've seen of just its core concepts, its spiritual connections, and what it means for us as an everyday human.
Yes. Yeah, I really liked the kind of the plot device of we need to learn to talk to these things and having the linguists kind of be our POV character, because so often, in terms of alien movies, our POV character is a military person. Yeah. They're a gun with a brain, and all they see, when you're a gun, all you see is targets. And like, in order to establish a different kind of framework for how to like think about aliens, you need a different kind of POV character. You can't have a gun as your protagonist. You need someone who's very different than that. And I think that Amy Adams Louise is a phenomenal POV character for that reason, that she's a linguist. She thinks about, her whole thing is language, and she speaks a lot of languages. But I think the plot device of these things are here, we don't know why they're here, they haven't demonstrated any hostility towards us, they're all over the world, we need to talk to them to figure out why they're here. I think that is just such a great, it's like subtle, it's slow, it's not aggressive, a way of expanding a story. I thought that was just such a great plot device.
And I love that the colonel, played by Forrest Whitaker, is still a military man and wants to shoot first or be ready, which I guess we have to have. If you take it like Inside Out too, you have to have the anxiety that's like, here to attack us, we must defend. But I like that he's not the one pulling the guns out and saying, let's go shoot him up. It's one of his soldiers. Yeah. It's like a lower level groundling. It's someone who's got too much fear in their eyes and they see some other thing. It sets it apart in that there is more of a believability that this is a real person. These are real people who are logical and calm. And they've got deadlines and people to answer to, but they're not doing stuff just for the sake of plot.
Yeah.
I noticed too many things this time that I know are just going to be annoying, so I won't go through all of them. I mean, I sat there taking notes at the beginning. I was like, wait, as she's walking out of the parking garage, the pole behind her is 465. It's out of sequential order. Does this mean? And I sat there and I was like, okay, this is why people hate film criticism. I'm not going to go there. So we're just going to cut all those notes. Or the fact that, like, as the news is playing, we have a female president talking about it with the news correspondent. I'm like, remember when we thought we were going to have a female president? Ah, those good old days. But I think it's just nice knowing the end from the beginning as being the central theme and it not being like aliens haven't become our presidents and we all have to work together. It takes all 12 people. I love her connection and interaction with General Shang and the idea of like, if she wouldn't have had the ability to give him that little thing he needs to know, then it couldn't have stopped everything. It's just not a it's not a gun v gun war. It's not a standing down. It's truly love and understanding and connecting on a personal level that is the key. And I like that's the weapon. And the weapon is her knowing about his family members. And that's that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I I love I love movies about a paradigm shift, you know, like a positive paradigm shift, and that's what this movie's about. It's about a positive paradigm shift, not just in the gift slash weapon of Luis being able to think like the aliens and kind of being mentally dislodged from time in a sequential order and be able to experience time in a cyclical kind of like all things at once. Like, yeah, that is a paradigm shift, but also the paradigm shift of scarcity, of dark forest, of like, if someone else's gain is my loss. That is the paradigm that we're locked in as a society, and it's toxic. And
Yeah.
I love that the aliens, when the big reveal is we're going to need your guys' help in 3,000 years. And so we're here to help you right now. It's just like, holy cow, what a great like mythic moment, because it's not even like the aliens don't have to tell us why they needed our help, what kind of help we can give them in 3,000 years. It's just that we need your guys' help in the future. And the only way to get that help is for us to help you right now by giving you a gift for free. And just like, what a paradigm shift of this is a non-zero sum game. Like there is a solution to this problem where all of us benefit, and how desperately needed that mindset is in the world right now.
In doing some research for this, I took a little moment and paused and just went to TikTok. And a completely unrelated video suddenly related. There's this British marketing professor giving a speech to a bunch of marketing heads in the US, whatever, they haven't filmed. He brought up something that I was like, wait a second, this does relate. He said, if Americans really wanted to fix the economy, anyone in hospitality would lobby for a minimum of 4 weeks paid vacation for Americans. Because in doing so, with more vacation, we take more trips and go places, infuses money into the economy for hospitality and the whole vacation industry, roads, travel, all that tourism money, which in turn raises the economic levels of the United States and more money in all these businesses, everything else, which in turn then means more money for the employer and the employee. It was like, wait, there's a way for everybody to be raised, and all it is not being selfish. And
So
I
you're
was like,
telling me the secret to the world that I want is PTO and recreation and vacations?
yes. When I talked to my Norwegian second cousin, third cousin, whatever he was, when I went to visit, and I found out that government employees making government salaries, which are still not the top salaries there, had 7 to 13 weeks of paid vacation that grew
Oh my
every year.
gosh.
And I was like, but you're Scandinavian. All your money goes to taxes. He's like, oh, yeah, like 50, 60% goes to taxes. And I was like, okay, so how do you have any money? And he's like, I own 2 cars. I own a house by the water. I own my house here. I have another vacation timeshare I also do over here by like a fjord. And then he just talked about his travel plans, 3 to 4 weeks every year of he's like, I did all of Southeast Asia and Africa and came back. And it was like, how does this even work? And he said, you just work your job and then you have all your time off, and that's where your money goes, and it's doable. We have healthcare across all of Europe. Anyways, I'm going to step off my democratic socialism rant for two
We are
seconds.
living in a dystopia.
We're living in a dystopia that makes us believe that we have to be better than our neighbor and beat them out, and be so much better that we have to take the money that they should be making, or else we can't thrive. And that is not the case. And this
Ugh.
movie does a great job of saying, worldwide, we have to be on the same page. Different books, whatever. We have to be on the same page of working together, or else we will never thrive. There is no way we move forward. And I love that's the story of this alien movie. Unlike Independence Day, where it's like, if America ponies up, and if we have one pilot go to a mothership with a stolen craft, we can take it down, and everyone else can do their thing too. And by the way, we save the world. This is like, no, through love, we'll save ourselves and save others. Okay, now let's work together. It's just a better type of movie.
It is a better type of movie. And I'm so like, I've been banging this around the entire episode. We need more stories like this,
Yeah.
where it is not an us versus them scarcity mindset sort of thing. Where, like, and I'll tell you, I love Marvel movies. I love
Yeah.
superhero movies. But I was listening to a podcast, the Ezra Klein show, where Edward Norton was on the episode, and they were talking about movies and stuff. And I'll never forget, he was like, the problem with superhero movies is that you've got extraordinary people who are using their extraordinary gifts to defend the status quo, to always
Yeah.
bring the world back to the way things just already are. They're not using their gifts to try and advance the world into, a better situation for everyone. They're bringing the world back to the status quo. And I'm like, oh shit, I can never unsee that now. I can never unsee that. And I'm like, I just want more movies like Arrival, like Contact, that are optimistic, that are about humanity actually solving the problems and coming together and solving the problems with love and cooperation and compassion and building a better world because of it.
And it seems like it should be easy enough to just tie that into more stories, but we don't see it.
But it's
And
so hard.
Arrival was not an art house indie flick that made $20 million. We're talking big money here. And you don't have to do it in the same color tones or palettes, and you don't have to do it with the same score, that beautiful Max Richter on the Nature of
Yeah.
Daylight. You don't have to do anything to that level to just copycat it. It can be a totally different movie.
I mean, did you see Tomorrowland? Disney's Tomorrowland?
Yeah, I did.
I mean, kind of, it's not about aliens at all. It's not a perfect movie by any stretch, but it had this radical optimism
Yeah.
to it. And there's the great Hugh Laurie has got this great like monologue in the middle.
Oh,
I
I
mean, he's
love
kind of the
it.
villain, but where he's like, the reason that the end of the world is so close is because you guys keep broadcasting it to your brains via your movies, your media, your news, your TV shows. You're constantly broadcasting the apocalypse to your brains, and you can't imagine a future that isn't an apocalypse. Therefore, we need to imagine, we need to be able to imagine better futures, and we need more stories about better futures in order to create a better future so that we can like see it. We need to have it mirrored to us.
Yeah, it's so interesting that movies in general are, like you're saying, they are mirrors of us. And for all those girlies and boys who love manifestation, isn't that this exact thing? If you can't
Yeah.
visualize, you can't manifest. And I will say this, with the upcoming election and all kinds of other things going around the world, there's just problems everywhere. If we continue to see this and be cynical and be like, oh, that's what we got to expect, then that is what you've got to expect. It's kind of sad. That's kind of what we're creating here. And when it comes to movies, everyone likes to fight about overrepresentation of different races, stereotypes, religions, whatever else, or there's all kinds of things people can complain about. But that is what movies should be. They should be a mirror of what we hope it to be. Like when you see a film that's got 30% or 40% people of color, in 40 years, it's going to be that everywhere you look. Like, we already know this is happening. So why not show it that way? Yeah. Why show the status quo, like you're saying, or Edward Norton said? I think that this movie is a great example of what we should be seeing with humans. I enjoy Independence Day. Sure, have some alien shoot 'em up movies, but I would like to see more in the vein of we humans are doing better. We are more peaceful, and here's how it could go. I feel like this year has been full of Fallout or Last of Us. Just humans are terrible. And it would be
Hmm.
nice to say, we don't have to be. There is a way to not be that way.
How about a non-zero sum game?
A non zero sum game.
Wow, this episode got us on our soapboxes.
It sure did. We love a good alien movie for that.
Yeah.
If everyone hasn't seen these movies, I'll have all the links in the show notes of where to watch them. You may have to pay to rent one or two with all these different alien episodes. It's worth it if you're interested. And if you're interested in a better world, just keep watching Arrival every year, like I do, and Madison might.
It's a sacred text.
It's a sacred text that will help us manifest what we need to have in the world.
The sacred Jedi text.
And on that note, we'll be back with our final episode next week. If you didn't already, listen to our episode with our Olympian friend Kate, which came out at the start of the Olympics last Friday. And we would like to thank JP Ellis, who provided the music for the intro and outro. Until next week, watch good movies and TV.